Someone recently expressed perhaps, sharing in a video with me and some sort of a collaboration, but interested in kind of what I'm doing and what my theories are on the templates, how I got here, that sort of thing. And I think I want to do a brief overview of that in this video, just because it does come up quite a bit. Well, it doesn't come up very much at all. You see my channel activity. As far as activity goes, it's one of the things that I get quite a bit. You're saying something that might sound credible to people, but for some reason, the way we think today, you look at the source and go, wait a minute, you're not credible. What do you have? Where's your degree? And what books have you written? That sort of a thing. And so when you're coming out of left field, it's going to be a little bit different. I don't think it's going to be all that common. But what I want to say is that I am not seeking any credibility myself. What I am doing is finding material that I'm trying to share the idea with other people who can then can see it themselves. I believe that there are certain minds that can see this material. However, we have become so busy and we're not looking at it that we've kind of lost it. I just happened to be some unique individual that came along that was heavily introverted, that got hooked into some patterns that I was seeing in there and just became obsessed about it. And I've spent many years just looking at it and finally cracked into it. But what does that look like? How did I get here then? Because that's quite a claim. What am I even talking about? My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the channel. You know what? I haven't even started to make claims yet. What I want to talk about is how I got to a point where I can make the claim that I see two common templates shared between all myth and religion from antiquity. All myth and religion from antiquity, spiritual teachings as well. There's a couple of reasons why this is not readily evident, why it is obscured. There is a something that they're doing that is very patterned. It's a puzzle that once it's worked out in the mind, we can extract the template. So for me, growing into the theory starts out as I'm raised in a home where it's a Christian home. I don't remain a Christian. I've got reasons. I've got a whole abusive childhood stories that I can talk about that I'm not going to get into here, but they do feature into this story. And it was an abusive home, and I was a runaway and molested and things like that as a child. So there was a lot of difficult things in the beginning. Again, those are going to be important as a part of this pathway, because the templates deal with that very thing, the human life, how we come about and how we heal, how we interact with ourselves. To get there, I am at some point in time in my teenage or, my early 20s looking for answers. I don't know what to do. I'm hurt. I see happy people in the world. I see unhappy people. I'm unhappy. I want to be happy. I don't know why people are happy. Why can't I just be? And I play like I am. Inside, I'm not, but everything is good. And, a lot of times you don't remember, you don't think about it. But then when you start remembering your life in childhood, all the hurt comes back. You're pulling this with you all the time. It's just a part of, it's your memories, isn't it? You can't get rid of it. I'm looking for how to be happy. And I began seeing similarities and patterns. Since I had been raised in a Christian home, I had gone to church and through Sunday school and other school programs or church programs, had to memorize verses, and I knew Jesus verses fairly well. I got a good memory on some of that stuff. But I can remember studying up on Buddha and learning about karma and realizing, you know what, this is the measure you mete unto others will be likewise meted unto you, or do unto others. It's the golden rule. And those are the kind of things you start hooking into to begin with. I know Buddha wants you to seek emptiness, and then Jesus says something about cleaning out the inside of the cup, because whoever made the outside also made the inside. And I'm beginning to see parallels here that I think, gosh, I think that these guys are somehow, they've got something going on, that they're teaching the same thing, but they're putting it in different verbiage. And I went to the degree that I realize now what they're doing. And here's an example. If I have been hurt and I hate something, this is something I put away. I have shame. I'm not even going to talk about it. That is something that I'm holding on to, and it's going to continue to cause a cyclical pain in my life if I don't let go of it. But I don't want to let go of it because I'm afraid. I don't know what to do. It's shameful. There's all kinds of fearful reasons why I don't want to look at it. However, it continues to come out and cycle around and emerge. The called person at some point recognizes that and says, I can extract myself from this pattern behavior by going back and addressing the situation, the memory. The memory is how the experience came about. This happened to me. I feel ashamed by it. You can't change what happened. You have to change the shame. Then it stops acting out. That is what I learned to start doing with the material. As I'm going along, though, I begin realizing that Buddha and Jesus are not just alike, but the Tao Te Ching from Lao Tzu is also the same, that they're all patterning, or that they're using some sort of a pattern thing that I'm recognizing that other people aren't recognizing. But I see that it's verbiage that's different. It would be like if I'm hanging on to that thing and I tell people, you have to forgive who hurt you, and they go, mm-mm. Or whatever that thing you're holding on to is just going to keep coming around and around unless you resolve it. You're hooked onto it. You got to let go of it. And people won't want to do that. And they won't want to pass that lesson around. So you can encode that in verbiage. This is where it becomes figure of speech. So instead you create stories and say something like, you cycle around that which you cling to for a desert people. Somewhere out on the coast, you want it to sound different because they're not going to follow that religion. So you tell them an anchored ship will only sail around its anchor. Somewhere else across the sea, it's like, that's not our religion. We need something different. So you tell them maybe the dog chained in the yard can only run around the chain. They all sound different, but conceptually they're figure of speech holding the idea that what you're hanging on to, you continue to cycle around. And that's what they're doing. And that took forever for me to figure that out. I kept playing out parts in the mind. So I see those things happening, but then I get into big stories. If you read the Dhammapada, it's some pretty short verse. The Tao Te Ching, Jesus, Sermon on the Mount, Sermon on the Plain, those are short, compact verses. Then all of a sudden you get into these big stories like Greek myth or Hinduism, the whole Mahabharata, the Old Testament, the Holy Bible as a whole. They're big, huge stories that still I see in them patterned things that look like they are still patterned but bigger versions. And I think, what? What is going on? I figure it out through Greek myth, that this is a pathway, that this story is a pathway. I am the selected one, Jason and the Argonauts. I must go defeat myself, King Pelias. That is my earlier self, who has control of the land that really belongs to me. I'm going to go get it back. That represents the idea that this up here, my life experience, I've grown up attaching to everything I could in the world until I wake up and realize I've done that and go, oh, I need to start detaching from the things that are not good for me because they're causing me to have this continually bad life. Anyway, the stories, what happens in the big stories then is that they shift to, I'm just going to say that there's a mental hierarchy. There's 5 parts that they're using, and this will emerge in the material, these 5 things. There's a higher being, there's a consciousness, there's a subconscious, there's all of the things that we hold in the subconscious, positive and negative, where they reside, and then there's the unified field that we all flow within, and those are in the material. How our life experience is in that unified field is dependent upon what is put up here that we have named or that we hold in our mind as our perceptions. All the things up there that you can deal with, a happy, fun, you can talk to people about it, those are good. If you have things up there that make you angry emotionally, that you don't want to talk about, or there's shame or something like that, there's something very derogatory, that's the stuff right there that are the monsters, the demons, the things that continue to act out. Let's think about that one for a second. We have a Jesus parallel that's super easy to see. This is how the analogous verbiage works and how you see them conceptually. In this case, so I'm talking about we're having a certain quality of life within this unified field that's based on the nature of what we're holding in our minds and our memories. Jesus, if you come to the altar and while you're there, you remember that you have aught against your brother, don't give your gift. Set it down and go resolve the aught with your brother first, and then come back and give your gift, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you in secret. Do you recognize that? Eventually, what we're doing is we're reading between the lines. There's a conceptual idea in here, held in verbiage, that is, what are you doing at the altar? You're looking for God's good graces. You want a good life. Please give me a good life. I will give something to you. Guess what? It's not going to work because you got stuff. This baggage has to be resolved. You have aught against your brother. This isn't about I'm mad at the neighbor. It's about what do you have up here? Your Father who sees in secret will reward you in secret. It's at the deepest place up in here. There it is. Anyway, so you go reading through the stories even at some point, and I go, they still don't make sense in some cases, until I begin to realize more and more that they're even changing the perspective. Sometimes it's the good guy telling the tale. Sometimes it's the bad guy who tells it from their perspective, and you think, oh, what do those other guys do? That we have to detach ourselves from the story elements. And I think that I can't really talk about the templates without talking about how to get there, how to find them, how life works. It all kind of goes together. And template is still an oddball thing. And if you're talking about monomyth, is that a template? Yes, there is. There's a sequence of steps that we take. That would be called the template. But what it is a sequence of steps that we take for self-healing. That is exactly what the template is, the monomyth one. The other template, I'll let that one go for now. It's how we came about. The monomyth is when we start to heal. Everything in front of that is how we came about until it's time to heal. Time to flood the world, it's time to heal. And they're going to work like that. All right, what I'm going to do is jump to what they're doing without pulling up examples. If I can, I'll do my best and just try to cut to the chase here. The 5 parts, mental hierarchy. We've got a higher being. Let's go there. If you are watching this, you're probably the kind of person that can get there. I don't know that everybody can. I'm not sure. The higher being. In your mind, when you can, this might not be the right place if you're driving or your work or something like that. When you get some peace and quiet time, sit down and relax and go to a place in your imagination where you can look at yourself. You're seeing yourself from the outside. You're seeing your life. You're not feeling your experiences, though. You're kind of detached from it from this perspective. This is a place we want to become very familiar with. We want to we're going to have to work from here quite a bit. This is who needs to be in charge, this part of us. What has happened is that there's a consciousness. That's what we're using right now. There's a subconscious, which holds all of the things, our experiences that we've had in life. It's empty at first. As we live life, that starts getting filled up with whatever the conscious decides. And then as a result of that, we experience life in that unified field based on the quality and the nature of what these life experiences are up here being held. Now, in order to change that, what we're doing is we're having to interact with things. Think about this for a minute. The conscious is really what we're working from as we're growing up in life. I'm on experiences. I'm seeing, I'm feeling, I'm tasting, I'm touching, all kinds of physical experience. We are learning by attaching and grabbing onto everything we can in the physical world. Now, there are things that we're getting that we're not wanting to grab onto, but you're coming from an environment where you're having an experience that you have no control over. And that is also going to be a part of what you become. So, imagine taking 3 kids, triplets, from anywhere in the world, brand new, just at birth. Raise one in Saudi Arabia, one in Arkansas, Southern Baptist place, and one in the outback, Australia. Get them together 40 years later, and they won't even agree with each other. They won't have the same life experiences, the same beliefs, the same religions. And what was the difference? It is what they became, what they believed, what they were given, and what, as a result, they are now. That happens to us, all of us. What we want to do is recognize that and go, oh, I want to extract myself from that. I don't want to be a product of what I was raised as. I want to separate from that. I want to rise above that. The conscious lives life having those experiences, and it decides the quality of those experiences. It has the emotional connection. Whatever the brain is experiencing connects with glands, which makes the body feel good, bad, depressed eventually when there's conflict, fear. All of that stuff is what the conscious does. The consciousness is really in charge of early life. The subconscious is what holds everything, and those are going to be good qualities and bad qualities. We don't have to worry about the good qualities. The bad ones are the ones that are going to continue to work out, and they're going to create our life experience again in that unified field. So what we need to start doing is things like, in a nutshell, I have a bad experience. I don't want to deal with it. It's painful. I don't think about it. I never think about it, because whenever I do, it's too scary. I don't like it. If you get to a point where you go, all right, I have to deal with that. It's hurting my life, my relationship. I can't apologize enough. People are like, yeah, I'm tired of hearing it. You keep doing whatever it is you're doing. If you get to a point where you go, okay, I can interrupt this. This is extreme. Okay, I'm going with the most extreme example here. But what you're looking to do then is understanding that as you recall it, the conscious is going to experience it. The conscious is going to feel. When you recall it, it's going to activate those glands, which is going to create your fear or your shame or whatever it is that's there, and it's going to make you not want to deal with it. We know that over and over and over again. That's exactly what's going to happen. So you take the higher being and go, all right, I get that. I see what's going on here. I am going to look from outside. And when the conscious is starting to re-experience that, and it's like, I don't want to experience that, the higher being goes, oh no, it's okay. It's okay, idiot conscious. I'm going to let you know that you need to experience this. You know what? Humans get used to things. The things we are most fearful of, the more fearful we are of them, the greater they become. The less fearful we are of them, the more they diminish. This is exactly the same way. So we need to not be fearful, but we're going to be fearful because we just have all those conditioning things in our mind. Anyway, what the material does is it helps us work through it. It tells us to go in and look at the stuff, think of the stuff. It's going to get lighter and lighter. After a while, you kind of go, okay, yeah. If you think through certain things, you're using procedures like, okay, I was molested. I hate that. All right, well, what was happening? I was on the streets. I was probably going to die. I was probably going to do this. I'm all right. Yeah, there's shame, but what is shame? At the end, am I doing anything positive for myself by holding on to that? It's actually the emotional state that I'm holding, that shame, that is causing my life to continue to have these cyclical problems. You don't forgive the other person necessarily. The idea is to forgive them. Here's what you do, though. You've got a memory and the emotional state of it. Once you change the emotional state, the forgiveness happens. You can look at somebody and say, okay, I forgive you. And then you keep feeling this way. Why is it not working? It's because it is stored in a way. If you look at it and go, I don't like the way it feels, that's a problem right there. That's the way it's stored. Anyway, the material works that way, but the stories get bigger and bigger. It's a storytelling culture. This was their media. The stories, as they get bigger and bigger, they're just slicing us up in life, from infant self to later self to the first self who is not okay to the hero self that's going to come back and defeat your earlier self and take back over your land and wipe out the demons and reconnect with your inner being and bring it back to the real world and have changes in life. All of that is what I find in here. Does that make sense? It's so starkly simple sometimes that people go, I don't like it. It plays out in the psyche and it eliminates supernatural, and it tells us in the beginning of the material, there's cycles, there's cause and effect. That life continues to emerge for us based on what we've got stored in ourselves or what we've got planted in our gardens. It emerges from us. And that left unchecked, that gets bigger and bigger and bigger and procreates throughout life until something happens and we interrupt it. Okay. I don't know if boy, Andy, anybody else, you got any questions? That's like, what about this? What about that? I don't know what I'm covering here. I'm just kind of blabbing out what I'm coming up with and hoping it makes sense to someone. And the templates are the healing template, not exactly Joseph Campbell's. There are things very specific that you interact with, and this is left pretty mystical. He probably did that on purpose. I don't know. But, meeting with the inner self and all of that, dealing with things, reconnection with the higher being is what I described as what we're doing. That becomes interactive. All of this is not interactive. It's there. It's mystical. Once you fully convert it, the difference between Joseph Campbell and me, perhaps, that's where my early life came in. I fit into this. I had to take the journey. So I got to know. I didn't look at stories and see all the repetition and go, these kind of elements right here seem to somehow represent something like this. That's what I get out of his material. When I get done with that, I go, oh, all of these are analogous, which means one thing that plays out inside of my psyche, which means it's an interactive step. This boulder being rolled up that comes down again and again. This liver being eaten out again and again. The birth, the painful birth in childbirth over and over again from what is the inner being, the female part of us, indicating that what we have experiencing out of us over and over again is painful. The wheel that follows the ox that draws the carriage, all of these story elements are in the front, and they hold conceptually that part that something is happening that is over and over again painful because of something we've done, and we need to interact with that. Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching has one right up front as well, right in the very first page in the first verse. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Do you see what you're hanging on to continues to emerge? Jesus, judge not, lest you be judged, for the judgment with which you judge others will be also judged unto you. Once you've made a classification of something, that's going to continue to happen. It's not about the physical world, it's about the spiritual world, and all of them, in the most whacked out verbiage, are putting in the same lessons. Isn't that amazing? Do you see how complex that is? Do those sound like they're the same? Rolling a boulder up and down, liver eaten out, pain in childbirth, wheel following around and around. They're all holding cycles. A tree growing up and getting chopped down, growing up again. They're repeated actions that are happening. And how do you finally kill that tree out? You pull it out by the root. Chopping it down, it just grows back again. Something happens and we go, I'm sorry. Yeah, you chopped it down. Comes out again. It keeps happening until you go, okay, I got a problem with my thinking that I've not resolved. I got to pull out the root. That's where it goes. I want to do an interpretation of something that is very confusing, and I would like to show what I'm talking about. If I go to the Call of Abram in the Bible here, that is chapter 12 normally in the Tyndale. I've taken out all the verses. I've modified this back to its original story format so I can get a better sense for it. And this is the second calling. Noah was the first one that found favor in the sight of God. He is the one that was chosen for the first monomyth. Now, Abram is being called right here, so I'm going to just tell you that as far as I'm concerned, I see Abram as the second called on the monomyth in Genesis. And that's just up to everybody else to believe it or not. What I want to do is just jump ahead, though, and take a look at a part of the story that we have to that we can make sense out of based on what I'm talking about. Abram and Sarai. Abram was actually told to go to Canaan and live there, but he went there, and here's where the story picks up. Abram and Sarai, his a beautiful wife. Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to reside there as an alien, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, I know well that you are a woman beautiful in appearance, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say you are my sister, so that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared on your account. When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw the woman was very beautiful. When the officials of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. For her sake he dealt well with Abram, and he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female slaves, female donkeys, and camels. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh called Abram and said, What have you done to me? Why did you not tell me this was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and be gone. And Pharaoh gave his men orders concerning him, and they sent him on his way and all that he sent. Okay, so there's a couple of things here. From a religious perspective, I don't want to get into it. It just seems too strange. This is eventually going to be the father of all of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, right here. How do you take that literally? he's under God's good graces, but he gives his wife away knowingly and gets stuff for it, but because he's afraid for his life. I don't like that story as something that it doesn't set well with me if you read it literally. You convert that, though, and what happens here? First of all, it all plays out in the psyche. All of these are parts of us. I am Abram starting over. What we're having is a series of monomyths going on. There's a network that's going to happen. We're going to succeed, fail, succeed, fail, succeed, fail. That's what happens when we try to heal ourselves. We have to continually go back in and heal things as we're resolving life issues. What this represents in the beginning, when you were in the land where there was a famine, you and Sarai together and there was nothing, that was actually the desirable place to be. That was where we started out empty. Then what happened because of the famine in the land, you go somewhere else, and they're using Egypt as an analogous. It's right there. It's an analogous term, and they've got something going on, but they were obviously not enemies at that time. This represents that that your inner self is being corrupted by something out. Pharaoh is corrupting, and you're getting some kind of joy and pleasure out of whatever you're doing in life is what is being represented on the template right here. So this is actually showing where we are living life and it's going bad again. And that in this case, the idea of leaving the past behind comes from Pharaoh. We see the cycle of bad things. Plagues are coming. That there's the cycle of pain coming. And Pharaoh representing a part of us that says, you know what, I'm done with that. You got to go. You got to quit doing that. This is an emergent patterned behavior that we will see. I just wanted to interpret that one real quick. Okay. You see how it works, though. The perspective of it can go all over the place. You don't know where it's coming from when you read it from the outside. When you put it on the template and read it conceptually, suddenly it makes sense. And if you've made it this far, what does this say about credibility? Credibility is not required. The information is required. And you also know that the way that I'm interpreting it and finding things in here, I don't know who teaches that. This is something we have to discover on our own. It's from long ago. It's not from modern academia. It's from long ago. We got to mentally go into their world. Okay, that's it. Love one another. See you in the next video.